So it's been a little while since I've actually recorded a video, but I've finally been scheduled for some time off for the coming weeks, so yay. But in any case, let's just go ahead and roll right into this. I don't want to take up time explaining what I've been, why there hasn't been many uploads. When I've said before, work schedule changes from week to week, and sometimes if I'm scheduled for something a few weeks out, it ends up not being the case. So, here we go. Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin. The Souls-like Final Fantasy with memes to rule them all. Every single generation has its meme game. A game with a decent story, good soundtrack, hilarious dialogue that spawns so many memes we can't even stand it, and great combat. And this game is the PS5's version. Unless another game comes along to replace it, this is the PS5's version of that. On the PS3, we had Metal Gear Rising, the game with amazing combat, funny characters, a decent story, and a soundtrack that you can never forget. On the PS4, we had Devil May Cry 5. Great combat, decent story, funny writing, many memes. And now in this one, we have Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin. So, is there anything to this game besides just the memes? Final Fantasy Origin is made by the Neo devs, for those who don't know, and when I say it's made by the Neo devs, it's also made by half of the animations from Neo. There are a lot of recycled animations that come from Neo. The dodge animation in particular is just straight up Neo. The ladder kick animation, as we all recognize on sight, was from Neo. And there are several other animations, a few runs. Some enemies, like the skeletons, were literally ripped straight from Neo and dropped right into this game. But borrowing assets from other games from the developer isn't a bad thing, you know. Neo is what it is and works very well. In some ways. For those of you who don't know what Neo is or don't know the team behind this game, they are Team Ninja, most known for their Ninja Gaiden series as well as Neo. For those of you who don't know the team's strengths, it is combat, and that's about it. The team really does struggle with literally anything else. They're not very good with level design. They don't really do the most interesting stories or really anything other than combat. And without the outside help from Square Enix on this one, I feel like this would have been about the same. So, the strongest thing in Final Fantasy Origin is obviously the combat. The combat in this game is great. I can't say it's like one of the best ones I've ever played, but it is an absolutely fantastic combat system. And I would love to see like more Souls-like Final Fantasy games even come from Team Ninja, using this as a base. Maybe you have a game where you do play a retelling of Final Fantasy 1 from Garland's perspective. Getting ahead of myself. Also, spoilers in this review, obviously, but everyone knew Jack was Garland anyways. So, the combat in this game is great. The job class system is ginormous. I platinumed the game in about 36 hours, and I didn't even level all the jobs at max. I got all like 4 expert jobs at max, and that took me a long time to do. I did finally get the platinum and close my time out with this game, and I had a great time with it. But the combat is what really kept me interested. It was the hook, right? You know, for some games, there isn't much to the combat. A game that, you know, is a prime example of this is The Witcher 3. The Witcher 3's combat is abysmal. It's not great. It's sometimes even pretty bad. I would say it's laughable at times. It's just a really not well thought out, pretty bad combat system. But, you know, for The Witcher 3, what keeps people interested is the writing, right? The world, the lore, the visuals. Even though The Witcher 3 isn't like a super visually stunning game these days, the way the world feels like it's breathing is a thing that very few games can accomplish. So the combat in this game definitely is the hook. It's not its story, definitely not. For some people, the voice acting could be the hook. I could definitely see that. We'll get to that in a bit, though. But the combat, again, I cannot stress it enough, is amazing. Every job feels different, and every job feels viable. There are ones that are obviously stronger than the others. For example, you can just completely solo the game as a mage. You don't need anything else as long as you have a mage build. Like, if you want to run full magic, just run the mage as one job and run one of the advanced or expert sage as the other job. So you can charge MP and switch back over to a stronger job to cast. It is ridiculous. Just don't run red mage, whatever you do. My God, red mage was terrible. It's just, hey, you want to burn through every bit of your MP for 0 damage? Go right ahead. But yeah, the jobs were amazing. I feel like the one-handed sword is probably the best of the bunch. Of course it is. But ones like Pugilist and Dragoon and Pugilist were still good. Or Pugilist, however you say that. For those of you who don't know, I don't script for these. I just talk off the top of my head. I feel like if I script, I come off too robotic. I don't want to do that. So I just kind of record it in one go and cut around it afterwards. So yeah. The combat in this game, though, is, I keep going back to it and repeating the sentence, but it is truly outstanding. I would say this has one of the better combat systems of the Souls games. It's up there with Bloodborne and Sekiro. In my opinion, Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring and ones like that, they don't have great combat, they just have great enemy design that really keeps you engaged into it. The combat itself isn't anything special, whereas you have your games like Bloodborne, which improves the combat enough to make it a really special combat system, and Sekiro. And then you have the Nioh games, which, while they don't have anything else that makes the Souls games so good, the combat in Nioh is by far much better than any of the Souls games, except for maybe Bloodborne or Sekiro. And in this game, it is definitely the same case. But that's enough about the combat for now. Let's move into the story. I think that the story this game is trying to tell is pretty solid. It's trying to tell a decent story, but I feel like it's very back heavy, right? The game just kind of strings you along with bits and pieces for the first like 60% of the game, and then in the last like 40 to 30% of the game, it just kind of really blows its load with everything. With you're Lithenians, you're strangers, you're this, you're not actually from Cornelia. What's going on with Jack? Here's everything. We'll lay it out to you conveniently. It's very much like, it feels like they didn't have a long story, so they had to like really try to stretch it across, but they didn't quite do it right because, again, Team Ninja doesn't really know how to do that sort of thing right. And I know that the story, I believe, came from Katsuhige Nojima, which is, I believe he was the story writer on Final Fantasy VII Remake, or he was one of them. I believe that's who it was. I know a lot of people see this game and say, oh, Tetsuya Nomura ruins another game. This isn't really Nomura's game. This is a lot of Nojima's game. And again, I think that the story that the game is trying to tell is pretty solid. I just think that the storytelling through the gameplay and the story beats that happen are not very good. But again, this is a little bit on Nojima. This is a lot on Team Ninja's lack of a way to properly do a story, but we all kind of knew this would happen, right? None of us ever go into a Team Ninja game expecting to be blown away by the story, because we know it won't happen. It's not their thing. It's just not what they do. So, the story is fine. The storytelling isn't good. But what about the characters, right? You can have a mid story, but if the characters can carry it all the way to the finish line, that's all that matters. The characters are, well, they're kind of generic anime robots, to be honest. You have Jed, voiced by Kagi Films, a guy I've watched on YouTube for an incredibly long time. And he is Discount Prompto. Just like Prompto is Discount Anime Soft Boy, Jed is Discount Prompto. Then you have Ash. Ash is generic strong guy, also generic anime black guy. Think Gladio, but black. And then you have Sophie and Neon. Neon and Sophie are kind of they're not really anything special at all. And the same kind of goes for Sophie. She's just not really anything. But the real star of the show is our boy, Jack Garland. This might well be the greatest protagonist of all time. And not because he's moving or because he gets you to care about him in a way. That's not at all why. This man is so unbelievably unique in terms of a protagonist. There is literally a part where a boss is starting to go into their non-stop monologue, and he jumps up, cuts them off, and screams, I don't give a fuck who you are. And it was amazing. I could not believe what I was seeing when that happened. I practically rolled out of my chair laughing. I was so amazed at that. I was thinking, there's no way this is a real video game. I cannot believe this is real. And it is. I'm very glad it is. But yeah. The characters aren't great except for Jack. Jack's ending, though, does get you in a way, because, you know, towards the end, very quickly, Jack does make fast friends with everybody at the end after being so annoying to them. And then at the end, you know, like I said, we're going into spoilers here. So to turn him into chaos, you know, everybody turns on him. They try to kill him, and you know, he has to kill them. And it really does kind of hit, because it's like, while the characters aren't good, they do what they need to do, right? They're side characters there to build up Jack's story. You know, there's some side characters in games that are there to have their own story and also be interesting. These are characters that are there purely to support Jack, right? They're there to make Garland become Garland. And they fulfill that role perfectly. They're just, you know, generic meat sacks that end up getting killed. Pretty brutally. Like, the way he stabbed Neon in the back of the neck with her sword. Oh, I cringed at that. It was so painful from the looks of it. But, yeah. You know, the characters are nothing special, but Jack is amazing. I cannot stress enough how much I love Jack. As for the soundtrack is okay. There's some themes I don't really like. I don't like the Chaos Shrine theme. The main battle theme gets super repetitive. I wish they could have added a couple more in, because there's like only 2 real boss themes, or the bosses have different themes. There's only 2 real battle themes, right? There's like 2 different ones that play, and they both get kind of tired at like the 20% mark. So eventually I just kind of got to where, for the gameplay, I would just turn on YouTube videos and have that in the background, because I was just kind of tired of listening to the same exact music over and over and over again. So the soundtrack is okay, but I definitely wouldn't say it's anything to write home about. Now for the level design. So this game's levels are pretty unique, because instead of just being some random areas like in Neo, they're actually different areas from other Final Fantasies. Every single mainline Final Fantasy is represented in this game. Every single one of them, no exceptions, except technically for 15. I could talk for hours about how this is clearly not Final Fantasy 15's Insomnia, and is a lot closer to Versus 13's, or even Gralia from Final Fantasy 15. But, yeah, I'll save you that. Maybe it'll be another video. So, yeah. Final Fantasy 15 technically doesn't have a level. You could say it's Versus 13. You could also say it's 15. But I feel like if you know the geography of the Crown City, you know that is clearly not the Crown City, right? Just from looking at it. And this is where Nomura's art design is kind of like, wait a minute. I think Nomura did this on purpose. And he clearly did, right? Of course he did. Why wouldn't he? And everybody knows he's still a little bit bitter. I think Verum Rex as a whole speaks to how bitter Nomura is that he didn't get to make his verses. You know, which I'm here for, but still. The levels are interesting, even though they're not very good. Like, the 15 level, while I did show that clip of, you know, looking out over the Crown City, that's literally the only time you get a decent change of scenery, except for the indoor garden. For the rest of it, you're just kind of running through cramped hallways in the Citadel. You're not really doing anything. The Chaos Shrine is okay, but it's not really anything interesting. None of the areas are really that great until you get to the Referent Wetlands, which is the Final Fantasy 13 area based off of the Sunleth Waterscape. I think that the 13 area is clearly the best in the game. I think that even though there's some that are decent, none of them really are as well designed as the 13 level. The levels are also short. Like, you can run through these levels in like 5 minutes flat, for sure. Now, if you're killing every single enemy, it's going to take you a lot longer, but if you're just trying to, like, you know, blitz through a game on the story mode, you're going to get this game done in like 4 hours. You're going to literally blow through this game. But the game is solid for sure. And now for one more thing that I feel like I have to touch on, the visual side of things. So visuals aren't that important to me, right? I go back to PS2 and PS3 games all the time. Occasionally I'll even go back to my old Spider-Man PS1 game. But this game, in terms of what it's supposed to be, is definitely not great. You know, a game that runs not at 60 all the time and then looks like this with not intense shaders, not intense textures, and also in like 720 to 1080p. Like I said, sometimes it is 720. The image looks very, very fuzzy on occasion. It is ridiculous that this game cannot maintain 60. I cannot believe that a game that looks this graphically meh can't hold 60 frames per second. That is unbelievable to me. Again, it's not a huge problem for me, but I figured I had to bring it up. So, yeah. Settling on a score for Final Fantasy Origin, I'm going to give this game a 7.5 out of 10. I feel like you could talk me down to a 7, but I really did just have a great time with the combat. You know, the jobs and everything just really kept me interested. And the story is good, it's just not told super well. The characters aren't the most interesting thing ever, but again, they do what they're supposed to do. They build Jack up to his transformation into Garland. The graphics are not very good. The level designs is pretty bland. And that's about it. It's a solid 7.5 out of 10. I can't really speak much more on that. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy. What do you think of this game? Do you think this game is a bit better than I'm giving it credit for? Do you think this game is a monstrosity like everyone else does? I think people have their Nomura hate boners on a little bit too strong for this game. I think it's going to be a bit underrated. It's a Final Fantasy like no other, that's for sure. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe. My name is Carmen, but I go by Ellism on YouTube. And yeah, that'll do it. Y'all take it easy.